The year was 2247, and humanity had never been stronger. 12 colony worlds spread across the stars carried the flag of the Terran Coalition. Cities floated in orbit around distant planets. Children were born on worlds their grandparents had never dreamed of seeing. Earth remained the heart of human civilization, a blue marble of life surrounded by defensive stations and warships. Admiral Daniel Carter stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, watching Earth spin slowly below him. Served 40 years in the fleet, and he had never seen a threat humanity could not overcome. His gray hair and weathered face showed the marks of countless battles. But his eyes remained sharp and confident. That confidence would shatter within the hour. The sensors detected them first. 3,000 warships emerged from fold space in perfect formation. They were not human. Vessels were massive, covered in strange metal that seemed to absorb light. Each one was larger than anything in the human fleet. Lisa Morgan was 26 years old. In serving her third year as a communications officer aboard the carrier Resolute, she sat at her station when the alarms began screaming. Her fingers flew across the console as she tried to make sense of the incoming data. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," she reported to her captain. "It is broadcasting on all frequencies." The message played across every screen, every speaker, every device on Earth and in orbit. A creature appeared on the displays. It was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its elongated head. When it spoke, the words were translated into perfect English. "I am High Arbiter Zolthex of the Galactic Sovereignty Council. Your species has been judged. You have expanded beyond your permitted boundaries. You have developed weapons that threaten the peace of civilized space. The Council of 17 Species has voted unanimously. You will surrender all military vessels. You will dismantle your colonies. You will accept permanent supervision. Failure to comply will result in extinction." Admiral Carter opened a channel to respond. He demanded time to consult with Earth's governments. He asked for negotiations. He offered peaceful dialogue. High Arbiter Zolthex simply ended the transmission. The first plasma bombardment hit the orbital stations before anyone could react. Lisa Morgan felt the Resolute shake as explosions tore through nearby vessels. Through the viewport, she watched defense platforms vanish in balls of fire. The Council fleet moved with terrible precision, each ship knowing exactly where to strike. On Earth's surface, people looked up at the sky and saw fire raining down. The Council did not target military installations alone. They struck cities, they struck hospitals, they struck schools. Denver, Chicago, Mumbai, Beijing, London, Cairo, one by one. The great cities of Earth disappeared under nuclear fire and plasma beams. Lisa stood frozen at her station as she watched the coordinates flash across her screen. Denver, her hometown. Her parents lived there. Her younger brother was studying at the university there. She tried to send a message, tried to establish any connection, but there was nothing. Just static, just silence. Just a mushroom cloud rising where millions of people had been alive moments before. Tears streamed down her face, but she did not make a sound. Around her, other crew members were crying, screaming, praying. The Resolute shook again as Council weapons found their targets. Admiral Carter watched his fleet die around him. 200 years of human achievement in space combat was being erased in minutes. The Council ships were faster, stronger, and carried weapons humanity had never imagined. For every Council vessel destroyed, 20 human ships were lost. He made the hardest decision of his life. All surviving ships, this is Admiral Carter. Emergency retreat. Execute Jump Protocol Omega. I repeat, emergency retreat. We cannot win this fight. We must survive to fight another day. Lisa heard the order through her earpiece. Her captain began shouting commands. The Resolute's engines roared as the ship turned away from Earth. Around them, survivors of the human fleet began jumping to emergency coordinates. Disappearing into fold space one by one, Lisa looked back at Earth through the viewport. The planet that had given birth to humanity was burning. Fires visible from orbit spread across continents. The atmosphere was filling with smoke and ash. 4 billion people were dying while she ran away. The Resolute jumped. When they emerged from fold space, they were in the darkness between stars. A few dozen ships had made it out, maybe 200 vessels total from a fleet of thousands. The communications channels were filled with crying, with confused reports, with people calling out names of loved ones on ships that had not survived. Admiral Carter's voice cut through the chaos. All ships, maintain radio silence. Set course for the outer reach. We need to get as far from Council space as possible. Lisa sat at her station doing her job, routing communications, updating navigation data. Her hands moved automatically while her mind remained frozen on the image of Denver burning. She had not yet processed that her family was dead. She had not yet accepted that Earth had fallen. Part of her believed she would wake up and discover it was all a nightmare. It was not a nightmare. Over the next 3 weeks, the scattered remains of the human fleet gathered in the outer reach, a cluster of barren worlds and asteroid fields that the Council considered worthless. Reports came in from the colonies. Proxima had fallen within days. Kepler had surrendered and been occupied. The Council moved through human space like a fire through dry grass. Of the 12 colony worlds, only 4 remained free, and they were the poorest, most distant settlements. The Terran coalition, which had ruled 100 billion humans across the stars, was reduced to hiding in the darkness like frightened animals. Admiral Carter called a meeting of the surviving commanders. Lisa was there, having been promoted to fill a position left empty by the dead. She listened as the Admiral spoke. "The Council believes we are finished," Carter said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. "They believe they have broken us, but they are wrong. Humanity has faced extinction before. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. We survive because we are stubborn. We survive because we refuse to die. The Council has made a mistake. They did not kill us. They only made us angry." Lisa felt something change inside her as she listened. The grief that had paralyzed her began to transform. It became something harder, colder, sharper. It became rage. Around her, other survivors were feeling the same transformation. The tears were drying. The fear was fading. Something else was taking its place. Something that would make the Council regret the day they decided to attack Earth. The Council had sought a quick victory. It wanted humanity to beg for mercy. It did not understand what they had awakened. Humanity was not going to beg. Humanity was going to make them pay. 18 months passed in the darkness of the outer reach. The survivors of Earth built their new home in places no one would think to look. They carved bases into asteroids, constructed hidden facilities on frozen moons. They lived in the shadows, and they worked. Kevin Brooks had been one of the greatest engineers in the Terran Coalition. He had designed the engines that carried human ships between the stars. He had built orbital stations that housed millions of people. Now he sat in a cold metal room on a nameless asteroid, surrounded by pieces of captured Council technology. Before the war, Kevin had a wife named Martha and 2 children, a boy named Samuel and a girl named Grace. They had lived in a small house outside Seattle, the garden that Martha loved, and a dog that followed the children everywhere. When the Council attacked, Kevin was already in space, working on a new project. He watched Seattle burn from orbit, never found their bodies. He kept a photograph of his family in his pocket. Every night he took it out and looked at their faces. Then he returned to his work with renewed focus. He was building weapons. He was building revenge. The Council technology was advanced, but it was also arrogant. The aliens had never faced an enemy who could truly threaten them. Their systems had weaknesses that Kevin learned to exploit. He combined Council power sources with human innovation. He created weapons that were smaller, but more deadly. He designed a new class of warship. They called it the Fury-class destroyer. It was half the size of a Council battleship, but twice as fast. It carried weapons that could punch through Council armor like paper. The first prototype was built in secret, tested in the emptiness between stars. Pronounced perfect, Kevin did not smile when they told him. He had forgotten how to smile, but he felt something like satisfaction. The Council would learn what human anger could create. Commander Sandra Webb had been Special Forces before the war. She had trained soldiers, led missions, and seen combat on 3 different worlds. When Earth fell, She was evacuating civilians from Proxima Colony. She saved 12,000 people before the Council fleet arrived. Then she fled with the others into the dark. Now she ran a training program in a hollowed-out asteroid called Haven. Young men and women came to her broken and grieving. She turned them into something else, the training reapers. The training was brutal. Sandra did not believe in gentle teaching. Council had shown no mercy to humanity, and humanity would show no mercy in return. Her soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity and toxic atmospheres and conditions that would kill an unprepared person in minutes. They learned to kill quickly and efficiently. They learned to ignore pain, ignore fear, ignore everything except the mission. You are not soldiers anymore, Sandra told each new group. Soldiers follow rules. Soldiers take prisoners. The Council took no prisoners. They burned our children in their beds. We are reapers. We harvest what they have planted. The reapers wore black armor with no markings. They carried weapons designed by Kevin Brooks. They trained until they could fight in their sleep. And they waited. Lisa Morgan had changed in the 18 months since Earth fell. The young communications officer who had watched Denver burn was gone. In her place was a tactical specialist with cold eyes and a brilliant mind. She had studied every piece of data the survivors had gathered about Council fleet movements. She had analyzed their formations, their tactics, their weaknesses. Admiral Carter had noticed her work. He promoted her to tactical officer aboard the Resolute, the same ship where she had served when the war began. She spent her days creating attack plans and her nights dreaming of fire. The Council relies on overwhelming force, she explained at a strategy meeting. They expect enemies to fight conventionally, matching fleet against fleet. They have never faced an enemy who strikes from the shadows and disappears. We do not have the numbers to face them directly, but we can bleed them. We can make every system they control a place of fear. Admiral Carter listened carefully. He had established his command base on Acheron, a frozen moon at the edge of known space. From there, he coordinated the growing resistance. Intelligence networks spread across occupied territories. Human agents infiltrated Council supply lines. Information flowed back to Acheron, building a picture of Council weaknesses. The Council, meanwhile, grew comfortable. They had conquered humanity with ease. They divided the captured territories among themselves, setting up mining operations and resource extraction. Human survivors in occupied space were forced into labor camps, working until they died to feed the Council's economy. Reports of small raids reached Council command, but they were dismissed. A supply convoy destroyed here, a patrol ship missing there. The Council believed these were the desperate acts of scattered survivors. They did not realize they were being tested. 6 months into the rebuilding, the first Fury-class destroyer completed its final trials. Kevin Brooks stood in the construction bay and watched the sleek vessel power up its engines. It was beautiful in a terrible way, a machine designed for one purpose only: destruction. If 16 more in production, his assistant reported. At current pace, we will have 50 operational within the year. 50 ships against an empire of thousands. Kevin nodded slowly. It would not be enough for a direct assault, but it would be enough to begin. Admiral Carter gathered his commanders for the final planning session. Lisa Morgan presented the target list. Kevin Brooks confirmed the weapons were ready. Sandra Webb reported that her reapers were eager for blood. The Council believes we are dying in the darkness, Admiral Carter said. They have forgotten about us. They think the war is over. He paused, looking at each face in the room. He saw grief in their eyes, but he also saw steel. He saw humanity at its most dangerous. We will remind them that we exist. We will remind them what they did. And we will teach them the price of attacking Earth. Lisa Morgan felt her heart beating faster. 18 months of waiting, of planning, of turning grief into cold fury. It was almost time. Across the outer reach, ships prepared for launch. Soldiers checked their weapons. Engineers ran final diagnostics. The survivors of Earth had transformed from refugees into something far more dangerous. The storm was about to break. The Council would learn that they had not destroyed humanity. They had only awakened something terrible, something that would follow them across the stars, something that would not stop until the debt was paid in full. Humanity was coming, and humanity wanted blood. Operation Reckoning began at exactly midnight, measured by Earth time that no longer meant anything except as a symbol. Across 47 star systems, human forces launched simultaneous attacks. The Council had no warning. They had grown comfortable in their victory. They paid for that comfort in blood. Commander Gary Phillips led the assault on the Valdrix shipyards. He was 53 years old, a veteran of 20 years in the Terran fleet. His wife had died on Earth. His son had died defending Kepler Colony. Gary had nothing left except his ship and his mission. His squadron consisted of 8 Fury-class destroyers, the fastest and deadliest vessels humanity had ever built. They emerged from fold space inside the shipyard's defensive perimeter, a feat the Council believed impossible. By the time the alarm sounded, Gary's ships were already firing. The Council guards at Valdrix had never faced human weapons before. They did not understand what was happening as their shields failed and their hulls cracked open. Gary watched through his viewport as construction platforms exploded in chains of fire. Half-built warships tore apart in their berths. Fuel storage tanks erupted into massive fireballs that spread through the station like waves. All targets destroyed, his weapons officer reported. Enemy reinforcements incoming, 15 minutes away. Then we have 15 minutes, Gary replied. Continue firing. Leave nothing standing. When the Council reinforcements arrived, they found only wreckage and fire. Gary's squadron had vanished back into fold space, leaving behind the burning remains of the largest shipyard in the Sovereignty. It would take the Council 3 years to rebuild. They did not have 3 years. On the occupied world of New Canton, Sandra Webb led her Reapers in a ground assault. The Council had built a labor camp there, holding 50,000 human prisoners. Men, women, and children worked in the mines until their bodies gave out. The Council guards treated them like animals. Sandra's team landed at night, their black armor invisible against the dark sky. They moved through the camp's perimeter without making a sound. The first Council guards died without knowing they were under attack. Throats cut, necks broken. Bodies dragged silently into shadows. The camp commander was eating dinner when Sandra kicked open his door. He was a creature with 6 arms and compound eyes, a species known for their cruelty. He reached for his weapon. Sandra shot him before his hand moved 3 inches. Free the prisoners, she ordered her team. Kill everyone else. The liberation of New Canton took for hours. When the sun rose, 50,000 humans walked out of the camp as free people for the first time in 18 months. Behind them, the camp burned. Not a single Council guard survived. Sandra stood at the gate, watching the freed prisoners stream past. Many of them were crying. Some fell to their knees and kissed the ground. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, stopped and looked up at Sandra with huge eyes. "Are you an angel?" the girl asked. Sandra knelt down to meet her gaze. "No, sweetheart. I am something much worse. But not to you. Never to you." Lisa Morgan commanded the tactical assault on Station Nexus from the bridge of the Resolute. Nexus was the Council's primary communication hub for the entire sector. Every message, every order, every piece of intelligence passed through its systems. Destroying it would blind the Council across dozens of star systems. The station was heavily defended. 12 warships and hundreds of automated weapons platforms surrounded it. A direct assault would be suicide. Lisa did not plan a direct assault. Launch the decoys, she ordered. 100 small drones scattered from the human fleet, each one broadcasting signals that made it appear to be a full-size warship. The Council defenders fired at the Phantoms, wasting ammunition and revealing their positions. While they were distracted, Lisa sent 3 Fury-class destroyers on a curved approach that brought them within striking distance of the station's reactor. "Fire," Lisa said quietly. The station's shields held for exactly 14 seconds. Then they failed. The reactor breach turned Nexus into an expanding ball of light. Shockwaves from the explosion damaged a Council warships badly enough that they could not pursue. "Communication hub destroyed," Lisa reported to Admiral Carter. "Enemy coordination in this sector is eliminated." Across the Sovereignty, Council commanders suddenly found themselves alone. Messages did not arrive. Orders were not received. Reinforcement requests went unanswered. Human raider groups, positioned in waiting, struck at isolated garrisons that could no longer call for help. High Arbiter Zolthex received the reports in his throne room on the Council homeworld. His 4 eyes blinked in disbelief as he read the damage assessments. 47 simultaneous attacks. Thousands of Council soldiers dead. The Valdrix shipyards destroyed. Communication networks shattered. A labor camp liberated with no survivors among the guards. "How is this possible?" he demanded. The humans were broken. They were scattered. They were dying. His generals had no answers. They had studied human military history. They knew about human wars, human weapons, human tactics, but they had never understood what humans became when everything was taken from them. They had never grasped the depth of human rage. Admiral Carter addressed the fleet from his command center on Acheron. His face appeared on screens across the surviving human territories. "Today we have shown the Council that we are not extinct," he said. "Today we have reminded the IM of the mistake they made when they attacked Earth. They thought they could burn our home, and we would simply die. They were wrong." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was like iron. "We will take back everything they stole from us. We will make them pay for every life they ended. They wanted war with humanity. Now they have it." Lisa Morgan watched the message from her station on the Resolute. Around her, the crew was cheering. For the first time in 18 months, humanity had struck back. For the first time, the Council was bleeding. But Lisa did not cheer. She thought of Denver. She thought of 4 billion dead. The attacks today were just the beginning. The Council had not yet learned what human fury truly meant. They would learn. She would teach them. The offensive pushed forward. Day after day, week after week, human forces struck at Council targets. Colonies were liberated. Supply lines were destroyed. Council garrisons found themselves surrounded and annihilated. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Sovereignty Council was retreating, and humanity was just getting started. The war had turned. What the Council had expected to be a quick extermination had become a nightmare without end. Human fleets appeared in systems that had never known conflict. Worlds that had celebrated the conquest of Earth now trembled at the sound of approaching engines. 14 months after Operation Reckoning, human forces reached the inner territories of the Galactic Sovereignty Council. These were the oldest, richest worlds in the Alliance. Their populations had lived in peace for thousands of years. They had never seen war on their own soil. Now war had come to them. Council civilians fled in massive evacuation ships, creating refugee crises on distant worlds. Markets collapsed as supply lines were severed. Political leaders who had voted for humanity's extinction now faced angry populations, demanding to know why they had started a war they could not win. The Battle of the Sara Prime broke the Council's military power. Admiral Carter committed the entire human fleet to the assault. Nearly 300 vessels, including 42 Fury-class destroyers. The Council gathered 800 warships to defend the system, their second-largest military stronghold. The battle lasted 9 days. Lisa Morgan did not sleep during those 9 days. She stood at her tactical station on the Resolute, coordinating attacks, adjusting formations, exploiting every weakness she could find. Her voice grew hoarse from constant orders, but she did not stop. On the 3rd day, Kevin Brooks arrived with a new weapon. He had designed it specifically for this battle, a device that could disrupt Council shield generators at range. Lisa watched as the first Council battleship lost its defenses and was torn apart by concentrated fire. "Begin shield disruption attacks on all primary targets," she ordered. "Focus on their command ships first." The Council formation began to collapse. Ships that had relied on their shields suddenly found themselves vulnerable. Human weapons, designed with 18 months of focused hatred, tore through their hulls. Commander Gary Phillips led his squadron in a daring strike against the Council flagship. His ship took heavy damage in the approach. Half his crew died in the first pass, but his weapons found their target. The flagship's reactor went critical. The explosion destroyed 3 nearby vessels. Gary did not survive to see the enemy fall. His ship broke apart seconds after firing the killing shot. His last transmission was simple: for Earth. Sandra Webb led boarding operations against disabled Council vessels. Her Reapers captured 6 enemy ships, taking their crews prisoner and seizing their technology. One Council captain tried to surrender personally to Sandra. He offered information in exchange for his life. Sandra listened to what he had to say. Then she shot him anyway. Her Reapers had found the records of what his ship had done during the conquest of Kepler Colony. There were some crimes that could not be forgiven. When the battle ended, the Council had lost over 800 warships. The human fleet had suffered terrible losses as well, nearly a third of their vessels destroyed or disabled. But the sovereignty's military power was broken. They could no longer defend their territory effectively. Nicole Adams had been a diplomatic attached before the war, signed to establish relations with alien species. She had survived the fall of Earth by pure luck, escaping on a civilian transport moments before the orbital stations were destroyed. Now she served as Admiral Carter's political advisor. She received the transmission 3 days after, Zara Prime. The Council wanted to negotiate. "Hi, Arbiter." Zolthex appeared via hologram in the command center on Acheron. Admiral Carter stood facing the image, his face expressionless. Behind him stood his senior officers, Lisa Morgan, Sandra Webb, Kevin Brooks, and a dozen others who had helped lead humanity's resurrection. The High Arbiter's posture was completely different from his first transmission. There was no arrogance now, no threats, no demands. His 4 eyes were downcast. His thin gray body seemed smaller somehow, diminished. "Admiral Carter," Zolthex began, "the Galactic Sovereignty Council formally requests a cessation of hostilities. We recognize that our initial actions against your species were ... regrettable. We are prepared to offer substantial reparations." Admiral Carter said nothing. He simply waited. Zolthex continued, desperation creeping into his voice. "We will return all occupied human territories. We will provide technological assistance to rebuild your colonies. We will establish trade relationships on terms favorable to humanity. Council officers responsible for ordering attacks on civilian populations will face tribunals. We will pay whatever price you demand for peace." Lisa Morgan watched from behind the Admiral. Her hands were clasped behind her back, but they were shaking. She thought of Denver. She thought of the mushroom cloud rising over her family's home. She thought of 4 billion voices silenced in a single day. Kevin Brooks stood with his arms crossed. The photograph of his wife and children was in his pocket as always. He remembered Grace's laugh, Samuel's smile, Martha's voice calling them in for dinner. He remembered watching Seattle burn. Sandra Webb's hand rested on her sidearm. She had seen the labor camps. She had seen the mass graves. She had seen what the Council did to human prisoners when they no longer had value as workers. She felt no sympathy for the creature begging on the screen. "Hi, Arbiter." Zolthex made one final plea. The Council sought only to protect the galaxy from potential threats. We acted out of fear, not hatred. We are not your enemies. We can be your partners in building a peaceful future. Please, we are asking for mercy." Admiral Carter took a slow breath. When he spoke, his voice was calm and quiet, which somehow made it more terrible. "You came to our home," he said. "We had done nothing to you. We did not threaten you. We did not attack you. We were building our civilization in peace, and you came to our home." Zolthex opened his mouth to respond, but Carter continued. "You murdered our children. You burned our cities. You killed 4 billion of our people in a single day. You enslaved the survivors. You worked them to death in your camps. And now, after we have fought our way back from extinction, you stand before me and request mercy?" The command center was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Admiral Carter stared directly into the hologram's eyes. "The Council did not show mercy to Earth. The Council did not show mercy to our colonies. The Council did not show mercy to the prisoners in your camps. You do not deserve mercy, and you will not receive it." He reached forward and ended the transmission. Lisa Morgan felt something release inside her chest. It was not satisfaction exactly. There could be no satisfaction after what humanity had lost. But it was something like justice. The Council had finally understood what they had done. And now, they would face the consequences. Admiral Carter turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet for final operations. We finished this." Operation Extinction began 6 days after Admiral Carter rejected the Council's plea for mercy. Every surviving human warship, every soldier, every resource was committed to the final offensive. The target was the heart of the Galactic Sovereignty Council itself. Chris Taylor was 22 years old. He had been for when Earth fell, too young to remember the world that was lost. He grew up in the refugee camps of the Outer Reach, raised on stories of green forests and blue oceans he had never seen. His mother had died when he was 12, worked to death in a council labor camp before Sandra Webb's forces could liberate it. Now, Chris sat in the cockpit of a Fury-class fighter. Part of the first wave heading toward the Sovereignty Gate, his squadron designation was painted on his hull in simple letters: Vengeance, all fighters. "This is Squadron Leader," the voice crackled in his helmet. "We are approaching the target. Expect heavy resistance. Remember why we are here. Remember Earth." Chris gripped his controls tighter. He had never seen Earth, but he carried it in his heart. Every human did. It was their home, their birthright, their reason to keep fighting. The Council had tried to take that away. They had failed. The Sovereignty Gate was a massive structure. Built over thousands of years by the combined efforts of 17 species, it connected the inner territories of the Council, allowing instant travel between their homeworlds. Control the gate, and you controlled the sovereignty. The Council's remaining fleets made their final stand here. Nearly 1,000 warships, everything they had left, formed a defensive sphere around the gate. They knew this was the end. If they failed, their civilization would fall. Admiral Carter led the assault from the bridge of the carrier Retribution. His old ship had been destroyed at the Sara Prime, but the name lived on. He stood at the center of the command deck, watching the tactical display as human forces engaged the enemy. "All ships, begin attack pattern Delta," he ordered. "Fury squadrons, focus on their command vessels. Carrier groups, provide cover fire. Today we end this." The battle was the largest in galactic history. Thousands of ships filled the space around the Sovereignty Gate, exchanging fire in a storm of light and death. Human weapons refined through years of desperate innovation tore through Council defenses, but the Council fought with the desperation of the doomed. Knowing that defeat meant the end of everything they had built, Lisa Morgan stood at her tactical station aboard the Retribution, her eyes moving constantly across the displays. She saw patterns in the chaos that others missed. She directed attacks with surgical precision, exploiting weaknesses the moment they appeared. "Carrier Group 7, adjust heading by 15 degrees. Enemy formation is weak on the port side. Fury Squadron 12, concentrate fire on that battleship's engines. Disable, do not destroy. We need them as cover for the next wave." Her voice was calm, almost mechanical. Inside, she felt nothing but cold purpose. This was what she had been working toward for 3 years. This was the moment when humanity would finally have its revenge. Chris Taylor dove through the battle, his fighter weaving between massive warships. Enemy fire streaked past his cockpit, close enough to feel the heat. He did not flinch. He had trained for this his entire life. His target was a Council command ship, a vessel 3 kilometers long that was coordinating the defense of the gate's western approach. His weapons would barely scratch its hull. But he was not carrying conventional weapons. Kevin Brooks had designed a new type of torpedo specifically for this battle. It was small enough to fit on a fighter, but carried a payload that could crack a planet. The guidance system locked onto the command ship's reactor signature. "Target acquired," Chris said quietly. "For Earth, for my mother, for everyone," he fired. The torpedo streaked toward the command ship faster than its defenses could track. It penetrated the hull near the reactor and detonated. The explosion split the vessel in half. Secondary explosions tore through what remained, creating a chain reaction that destroyed 2 nearby ships as well. Chris pulled away from the blast, his heart pounding. Around him, his squadron mates were achieving similar results. Council's command structure was collapsing. Sandra Webb led a boarding team onto the Sovereignty Gate itself. Her Reapers fought through corridors designed for aliens, cutting down defenders with brutal efficiency. The gate's control center was their objective. The Council had stationed their best soldiers to protect it. They were tall, armored creatures with natural weapons built into their bodies. They had never been defeated in close combat. They had never faced the Reapers. Sandra killed the last defender herself, driving her blade through a gap in its armor with a precision born of endless training. Behind her, her team secured the control center. The gate was theirs. God. Admiral Carter, this is Commander Webb. We have control of the Sovereignty Gate. Transmitting override codes now. The battle shifted instantly. Council ships that had been using the gate to bring in reinforcements suddenly found themselves cut off. Human forces poured through the opening, striking at the Council homeworlds beyond. One by one, the 17 species of the Galactic Sovereignty Council surrendered. Some fought to the last ship. Others opened communications and begged for terms. It did not matter. The result was the same. High Arbiter Zolthex was captured, trying to flee his palace. They brought him to Earth, to the ruins of what had once been the United Nations building. Amanda Price, a prosecutor who had lost her entire family on the day of the attack, read the charges: genocide, war crimes, crimes against sentient life, orchestrating the deaths of billions. The trial lasted 6 months. Witnesses testified about labor camps, mass executions, and systematic brutality. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts. In the aftermath of victory, humanity faced a choice. They could have done to the Council what the Council had done to them. They could have burned alien worlds, enslaved alien populations, taken revenge without limit. They chose differently. Humanity occupied the Council territories, but they did not exterminate. They dismantled military forces, but they did not destroy civilizations. They demanded justice, but they did not commit genocide. They proved they were better than their enemies. Admiral Carter stood before the memorial on Earth, rebuilt stone by stone in the place where billions had died. The names of the dead stretched for miles, carved into black granite. He read them silently, honoring each life lost. Lisa Morgan returned to Denver. The city was gone, replaced by a garden of remembrance. She planted a tree where her family's home had once stood and sat beside it until the sun went down. The rage that had driven her for 3 years finally began to fade, replaced by something quieter. Not peace, exactly, but acceptance. Kevin Brooks watched his engineering teams begin new projects, ships designed for exploration, not war. Stations meant for research, not defense. The galaxy was open now, and humanity would explore it. Finally smiled, for the first time since Seattle burned. Sandra Webb trained the next generation of soldiers, teaching them that strength exists to protect the innocent, not to destroy the helpless. The Reapers remained, but their purpose changed. They would defend humanity, not avenge it. The Council had sought mercy when they faced destruction. The Council had requested mercy when their fleets burned. But humanity taught them a lesson that would echo through the galaxy for 1,000 years. Those who bring fire to Earth will burn in its flames, and humanity never forgets.